In this video, we will demonstrate how you can turn images into wavetables. To create a new image wavetable, go to the Menu button and select Create, then Wavetable. This will bring up the Wavetable Editor. The Wavetable Editor has 3 tabs. The Wavetable tab is where you open images, select a scan path or orbit, and tune the harmonic content. The Options tab is where you can edit settings that control the processing. There are currently 2 options: Remove DC Offset and Align Phase of Harmonics. Remove DC Offset is used to eliminate any offset in the resulting audio level. This should generally be checked when you are working with images and unchecked when you have opened a waveform. The Align Phase of Harmonics checkbox is used to align the phase of all harmonics produced, so there is no phase cancellation caused by scan path modulation. This can be on or off for images, but should be off for WAV files. The Metadata tab is where you set up non-audio properties of your wavetable, like name and description. Let's name this wavetable Demo and enter some basic copyright information. Now we will start in the Wavetable tab by opening some images to try scanning and see what sounds interesting. Clicking the Open button opens up your computer's File Explorer. You can select one or more images to open. For this example, we will select multiple images. Once you have opened some images, you can navigate between the images by pressing the arrow buttons. Notice that once an input image is loaded, an output spectrum is generated. The Output Spectrum pane allows you to see the harmonic content of the sound you are working on. Higher harmonics are at the top of the view, and the lower harmonics are at the bottom. The intensity of each harmonic is indicated by differing levels of brightness. Bright areas represent strong harmonics. Dark areas represent less strong harmonics. The left side of the output spectrum display shows the harmonics that play at the beginning of the wavetable. As we move from left to right, the display shows how the wavetable evolves over time. The keyframe view allows you to control how the orbit and harmonic controls change over time to produce changes in the sound of your wavetable. The diamonds are keyframes. To add a keyframe, click on an empty area. This creates a new keyframe that takes its settings from the settings at that point in time. To drag a keyframe, click, drag, and then release. To remove a keyframe, click and drag the keyframe out of the keyframe view. Notice there are 2 rows of keyframes. One row allows you to control how the orbit changes. The other row allows you to control the changes in harmonic processing. These 2 rows of keyframes correspond to the orbit and harmonic panes at the bottom of the wavetable editor. When a new wavetable is created and an image is loaded, nuSpin initializes your settings to produce a slowly shrinking orbit. The round keyframe slider at the top selects the position in time that the controls affect. As you drag the slider, you can see the knob positions move. The timeline of the output spectrum and the keyframe slider are aligned to help you see how your keyframes are affecting the wavetable harmonics. The orbit controls allow you to select the position, shape, angle, and scale of the orbit. Horizontal center allows you to move the orbit left or right. Vertical center allows you to move the orbit up and down. Eccentricity controls whether the orbit is circular, egg-shaped, or a line. Angle rotates the orbit and is most effective when you have increased the eccentricity. Finally, scale sets the size of the orbit. Let's select the nebula image and create a scan path that starts on the outside of the nebula and moves toward the center. First, we will work on the start. Make sure the keyframe slider is set to the start position at the left. Next, we center the orbit over the nebula using the horizontal and vertical offset controls. Finally, we adjust the scale to align the orbit with the outside of the nebula. Now we are going to set the orbit for the end of the sound. Move the keyframe slider all the way to the right. Then reduce the scale until the orbit is over the inner ring of the nebula. Notice how the output spectrum changed as we were adjusting the orbit. Each time you make a change, nuSpin recomputes the spectrum and wavetable of the sound. Let's listen to how this sounds. I am going to smooth out the sound a bit by editing the harmonic controls. First, I move the keyframe slider back to the start position to make sure my changes are made at the beginning of the sound. Now, I am going to smooth out the variation in harmonics by increasing the blur value. Notice how the harmonics in the spectrum spread out from left to right. Blur affects each harmonic separately. Next, I am going to reduce the expansion value so the sound isn't as bleepy. You can think of expansion as a kind of noise gate that attenuates harmonics with a lower intensity. When expansion is minimum, all the source harmonics are present and unaffected. As expansion is increased, low-strength harmonics are reduced and the sound starts to ring or bleep. Finding the right setting can take a few tries. Low shelf gain allows you to control the strength of the fundamental relative to the rest of the sound. Low-pass frequency allows you to roll off the higher harmonics. Finally, you can think of normalize as the strength of an automatic gain control. With normalize off, the gain envelope is unmodified. As you increase the value, the gain becomes flat. Of course, all the frequency controls can be keyframed to enhance the character of your wavetable. Once you are done tweaking your wavetable, click Save to save it for later use.